DLC has brought us some banger campaigns over the years, but with the most recent release of the Tigermen, it does beg the question, which ones are the best? Well, join me today as we count down the top 10. Golgi the Maneater drops with Omens of Destruction and, if you ask me, is the standout lord of the DLC. His campaign of course came with the much anticipated Ogre Hall, but on top of that he has a playstyle that is truly unique to him. Rather than endless conquest, he instead encapsulates the idea of a roaming mercenary by teleporting around the map, taking on jobs against a variety of factions, all without having to commit to any wars of his own. This allows him to rely entirely on camps and feed them with meat faster than any other lord on the market. This symbiosis means he can get the most out of his camps with ease, with rapid access to the full power of the Ogre roster and powerful bonuses for armies fighting in their radius. His one-of-a-kind nomadic nature means he is constantly packing up and deploying his camps as needed, and he forces you to engage with every aspect of the system to succeed. Now he's not getting any higher because, whilst his gameplay is extremely unique, it can also become a little bit repetitive. Refusing to commit to any wars and put down any routes means you are fighting an endless series of battles with no real direction other than the current contract. You don't end up playing the same repetitive game as everyone else and instead just amass as much wealth as you can with no real end goal in mind. You can make a home for yourself, but without any reason to, it does feel a little pointless. Still, if you want to battle against a massive variety of factions all in one campaign, he is the perfect lord for just that. I truly believe that Grom the Paunch is one of the best thought out lords they've ever released. He may not be topping the list here today, but regardless, his mechanic is so much fun to use and experiment with that it is my benchmark for truly great mechanics whenever we get something new. I'm of course talking about Grom's Cauldron, his mechanic that allows you to collect ingredients by battling against all kinds of factions and units, and use those to craft a huge number of different meals with a range of powerful effects. These range from simple stat bonuses to entirely changing how certain units in the faction work, giving you a near unlimited creativity when deciding exactly what you want to use. It's a campaign that encourages you to explore the world and hunt down different factions by simply letting you know you'll get some new ingredients. It's one of the best examples of motivation you can find in game and does it all without anything too direct. I will say however that Grom's campaign outside of his mechanic has always felt a little bit wonky. You start in the middle of Bretonnia, which is fine since you want to attack the High Elves, but it does mean your early game is surrounded by unsuitable terrain, which makes most early expansion nearly impossible or at the very least unaffordable. Most of the time I end up scuttling to the mountains towards the Badlands so I can build some power before heading over to Ulthuan, but that's just me. Grom is still a great campaign from the peak of Warhammer 2's popularity. Oxyotl came with the final DLC for Warhammer 2, and you know they ended with a bang. I've made it no secret that I believe the base Lizardmen are one of the worst designed factions in the game right now. However, Oxyotl fixes that by bringing enough mechanics of his own that you don't even have time to notice anything else. His campaign revolves around intercepting visions of chaos to take down chaotic threats across the world by teleporting back and forth between them and his home base. This combined with his use of silent sanctums allows him to essentially be omnipresent and take down threats no matter where they appear. It gives the campaign such a clear direction of stopping chaos that even when you're not out on an expedition, you know exactly what you need to be doing in the meantime. It certainly can be one of the more challenging campaigns in the list since his battle plan is all about sneaky skinks, but if you can use him right, you will rarely be fighting fair and using ambushes in both campaign and battle to ensure every encounter is in your favour. I do have to point out there is one glaring issue I have with his campaign, and it is very minor but also quite funny. His faction effects grant skink units bonuses based on their XP level, which is great. However, 1% per rank in a game where the max rank is 9 means if you get units to max XP, which is pretty hard, they gain 9% extra missile strength and speed, also known as basically nothing. This amusing side effect aside, Oxyotl is great fun if you're looking for a sneaky hitman playstyle. You go take care of some chaos, then put your suit back on and disappear before they know you're there. The recently reworked Norska are a ton of fun, so of course I had to get one of their lords on the list, and Sail seemed like the obvious choice. He takes everything great about the rework and adds on his own mechanic for some added tomfoolery. First of all, he takes their altars, which can feel a little bit spread too thin, and simplifies them into a single bar to feed settlements to. Combine this with his manipulations to twist every scenario to his advantage, and he is simply a blast to play. Hell, I even like his starting location, full of plenty of enemies and challenge as you take the fight to Cathay, which has become a little bit of a Royal Rumble now I stop to think about it, but I digress. You start out in the Chaos Waste before battling your way through the Bastion and into the rich land ripe for you to raze to the ground. I love his quest battles at each milestone to secure his power, and everything in his campaign is a blast to play. Of course, you are still dealing with the Norska classics of spoil, sacking, raising, and so on, but I just think he does it the best out of the three. Plus, he can fight on a mammoth and cast spells, so he also has the most fun battle playstyle of the options. Just a great time all round. My glazing of the Wood Elves will never end until everyone understands just how broken they are as a race. In my opinion, they are the strongest race in the game, and no other lord demonstrates this better than Orion. First of all, you have the standard Wood Elf campaign of teleporting between magical forests, healing them up, performing rituals, and bathing in more gold than you know what to do with. Without a legendary lord, this is a ton of fun, so he's already off to a strong start. Then we add on his wild hunts, which reduce the cooldown of the deep roots, empowers his council with all sorts of effects and more, but by far the most hilariously broken effect that I think I've ever seen in-game is his army upkeep reduction based on the number of active wars you're taking part in. This seems bad since too many wars normally means too many people attacking you, but you are playing as the Wood Elves, aka one of the hardest factions to attack in the game because of just how powerful and inhospitable magical forests are. You teleport around declaring war on the locals and then never bother to kiss and make up and get your armies at a fraction of the cost. It's broken and playing as him is a total power trip, but he's not getting any higher because honestly, it does get a little bit too easy. You quickly reach critical mass and no one can do anything to stop you, which does sap a little bit of the fun out of things. Still, I cannot recommend Orion or any other Wood Elf Lord enough. They're such a fantastic fun faction that often gets written off as tree huggers. In the long history of Total War Warhammer, there are a few lords who have had a glow up as drastic as Archaon. From the pre-order embarrassment of Warhammer 1, all the way to the true ever-chosen of Warhammer 3, he has come a long way and is finally as powerful as he should be. If you want to become the Crisis and raise the mortal world in the name of the Chaos Gods, ignore Daniel because Archaon is the chap for the job. He's the lord best positioned to vassalize a huge chunk of the Chaos Wastes and extracts the most value from doing so with research, relations, and most importantly, souls. With these souls, he can make use of more gifts of Chaos Undivided, granting him all kinds of powerful bonuses. His army effects are very simple but add a lot of strength to a roster that's already juiced to the gills, and most importantly is the fact he's so undivided. He can use the power of all 4 or 5 branches of Chaos no problem, and open the literal gates of hell on the mortal realm. He takes a little while to get going, but by the time you touch Kislev's soil, you are a literal horseman of the apocalypse that's essentially impossible to stop. The thing that I love and hate about the Warriors of Chaos is that things can always go wrong, no matter how well you are doing. If you lose a few armies, it can take you quite a while to get everything back with the Gifts of Chaos and Warband upgrades, but when you reach that high level of power, everything feels earned, making using it all the more satisfying. Honestly, you could pick any of the Warriors of Chaos for a spot on this list, but in my opinion, Archaon is the best one to truly embody the chaotic apocalypse. When choosing a lord from the Skaven, it of course came down to Throt or Ikit Claw, and whilst I think I prefer Ikit's technological reliance, Throt undoubtedly has a more fun and engaging campaign. His ability to mutate nearly every unit in the roster with such a range of powerful upgrades gives him so much freedom to literally experiment that it cannot be matched. Sure, he may not have the most powerful weapons teams in the Skaven and nukes, but oh boy does everything else make up for it. And the more you do these experiments, the more you feed the growth fat, meaning more resources for further experiments and of course a near endless supply of monsters. This mechanic is so simple but offers so much freedom in exactly how you want to mutate your units that it's fun and engaging for basically the entire campaign. Plus the constant risk of unstable units and the need to recycle them keeps your army changing and feeling fresh for hours on end. Plus, on top of all this, you're the Chaos Sowing Skaven with no honour in sight, so you are performing BS ambushes, spreading corruption, and being an all-round backstabbing betrayer, and who doesn't love that? The location also allows you instant access to the Empire or Norska depending on your preferences. Even CA staff agree that Throt is one of the best designed campaigns in the game, and it is impossible to disagree with, but even so, I don't think he's the best. Another very recent campaign addition, and Dekala really was the pinnacle of Tides of Torment for just how fun her gameplay loop is. Her unique approach to settlements, where she uses the majority of them to harvest thralls to fuel the radiance of her pleasure palaces, is so unique and makes expansion a lot more thought out, as you really have to think about when and where to establish major settlements. It slows the campaign down, but in doing so, makes each bit of progress feel earned and not given. Combine this with the Tormentor's tributes that grant you all kinds of bonuses for all areas of the campaign, which is fed into by your palaces, and you have a campaign with an excellent feeling of growth. Nothing in the faction is handed to you, and every single bit of progress you make feels so distinctly worked for that you can't help but get sucked in. Even her unit corruption makes battles a lot more interesting than simply stealing units, not to mention a lot more affordable. Bonus points if you enable Immortal Empires Expanded so she can head down to Ind and Kresh, but even in the base game, she is simply brilliant. Elspeth feels like such a cop-out to be on a list like this because we have all of these creative campaigns with their unique approaches to progress, and then she's just really good at blowing stuff up and gets second place. But if you've played Elspeth and looking at the stats, you probably have, you understand that she is some of the most fun you can have in this game called Warhammer 3. The Imperial Gunnery School is a mechanic that gives you currency based on how many kills your missile units get and allows you to spend that currency to make them even better at killing. It's such a ridiculously simple mechanic that sounds boring, but the upgrades and power trip make it anything but. Things get especially interesting once you unlock the Amethyst Armory with whole new units and devastating army abilities, but even with vanilla units, you are in for a great time. I haven't even mentioned her Guns of Maul mechanic because it's a little bit of a nothing burger. Yeah, she has a second mechanic that's extremely forgettable, and even so, the Gunnery School is just so awesome sauce that it carries her all the way to second, no problem. If you feel like using and abusing missiles of every kind, play Elspeth. Few do it better and reward you as well for the trouble. However, there is one lord who arguably does it better, and he was even in the same DLC. Malachi is quite simply the most fun you can have in Warhammer 3, and I don't really think you could ever convince me otherwise. First off, he's a hybrid faction that can take settlements but also has access to his airship horde, which is probably the strongest horde in the game, allowing recruitment along with a litany of powerful bonuses. Secondly, he has his adventures, which provide a fairly large number of missions to complete before taking on challenging final battles. All of this is to empower various artillery and war machine units in his faction with all kinds of crazy bonuses before we even mention the bonus power they get when they're in his army. And lastly, he's got Gotrek and Felix from turn 1, which doesn't sound like much but is insanely overpowered. He is balanced by having a truly abysmally difficult starting location that would be enough to ruin things for any other lord, but for Malachi, it's just more victims to suffer his ire. I really cannot explain just how fun he is to play with such excellent direction at all times and rewards around every corner. Thrones of Decay is a banger DLC, and Malachi is the gemstone in the crown and undoubtedly the best DLC campaign in Warhammer 3. But if you instead want to understand every single race in Warhammer 3, then check out this video for exactly that.